Welcome to Season 4 of Creatively Speaking, Food for Thought. I'm your host, LeAnna Weller-Smith, founder and executive creative director of Weller-Smith Design. In this episode, I chat with cookbook client Mel Gunnell of Mel's Kitchen Cafe. Mel's journey as a food blogger and content creator began 17 years ago and has since evolved into a story of resilience, creativity, and self-publishing success. Join us as we explore Mel's transition from managing a faux farm and balancing family life to building her popular food blog and eventually branching out to create her wildly successful cookbook. With insights into authentic marketing strategies and community building, Mel's story is a testament to the power of staying true to oneself while navigating the ever-changing digital landscape. Whether you're an aspiring food blogger or simply love a good story of personal growth, this episode promises to inspire and inform. So let's get started. Hi, Mel. Welcome to Creatively Speaking. I'm so excited to have you on this call today.
Thank you. I'm really, really excited to be here. You know that because you know I adore you, but I'm so excited.
I'm going to give everyone a little bit of context. So Mel is a past client of ours, and we were just saying, when we work with clients, it's like for about a year. And so we are used to seeing each other every other week for a whole year. So we haven't seen each other for almost 9 months, I think.
I know, and it's really fun to reconnect.
It is. So what we're going to be talking about today, just to give everyone a little insight. So this season is called Food for Thought, and it's all about different publishing paths that self-published authors take. Either they're self-published or maybe they are traditional, maybe it's hybrid. But what we really want to do is talk about each person's journey to a finished published product. And we had the pleasure of working with Mel, as I mentioned. So before we dig into all of that stuff, Mel, I would love for you to just introduce yourself and let our listeners know a little bit about you and who you are and what you do.
Okay, so I'm Mel, and my big identity right now is that I'm a food blogger, but we all have different identities too. I'm a mom and I have 5 kids, and we live in Idaho on 25 acres. So we have kind of this like fun faux farm lifestyle going on. But food blogging has been my career for the last probably 17 years, although just like most food bloggers, I didn't really start out for it to be that way. My college degree has nothing to do with food blogging because they did not exist back then. But I just kind of started a food blog, and it grew to the point where it's been just a wonderful opportunity for me to work doing something that I love. And so that's kind of the majority of what I do job wise, but life is busy doing all sorts of other things. I've been food blogging since 2007, which makes me a grandma in the food blogging world, and my wrinkles show that. But it's been interesting, obviously, to be part of that journey because it's evolved so much. Social media came on the scene much later than that, Google and all those things. So it's been good for my brain to have to learn new things as the food blogging world has evolved and changed.
Yeah. So when you started, was it out of just curiosity?
Yeah, I mean, truly, when I started, I mean, food blogs were so brand new. I mean, there was maybe, I'm guessing when I started, there was maybe 200 to 300 food blogs. And now, I mean, there are hundreds of thousands, if not, I don't even know, maybe there's millions. But I had a lot of little kids. I have 3 kids under the age of 3, and we were living in the Midwest. I didn't know a lot of people. So it was kind of out of a desire. I had stopped working because my husband, we were moving about every 2 years for his job. And so it just seemed normal for me to be like, okay, I'll take a break. I'll stay home with the kids. But I needed a little something else for my mental sanity and everything. So I just one day saw online. And again, I mean, it sounds weird to say, but the internet was not what it is today. It was different. It was smaller. But I saw this thing that said, there's this group that if you post recipes, it's called like the Daring Bakers Club. The only way to join was you had to have a website to post your results. So I was like, oh, I'll just start it. I've always been pretty like good with computers. So it was definitely not with the intent that anything would come of it more than just to give me like a hobby. And it was a true like hobby that grows into a job type of situation. It's been such a blessing. It's been a really awesome journey for me.
Yeah. And it's funny, like when you go back in time, right? Because even for me, like when I went to college, I always tell people that my generation, we created the internet and that, figured it all out for everyone. We were coding. We were all sitting there with our teachers, like, oh, I'm like this spin. And then like, how did you make that spin? Then it was like crowding around your desk saying, like, what did you do? And it's like, I don't know. I tried to spin it. And it's been a journey. So it's always so interesting to me. Like we do work with a lot of content creators similar to you where you started at the very beginning. It was new for everyone. So it was almost like
Yeah.
there was no intimidation factor because
And there really was no competition. I mean, I feel like now a little bit. I think the food blogging space is genuinely kind of like a warm, good space to be. But there is still this sense of like scarcity and competition, right? Like you're stealing my recipes or, whatever. I mean, not to paint it all bad, but there wasn't that at the beginning because it was like we were just like, this is exciting. This is exciting to have a space to be able to share. And it seems like ancient history, but it wasn't that long ago. It's just that the internet has exploded in that time. I feel so grateful I got in when I did because I feel like I was able to create my content creation, food blogging identity in a very like natural, authentic way because it wasn't cutthroat. You weren't fighting the algorithms to get up in Google search ranking and it wasn't social media. And so I was really able to be like, just myself online and and not that people aren't today, but I do think it's different because there's so much competition for traffic and all of those things. So I'm really grateful that I got in on the blogging scene back when it was relatively unknown.
So when you did start, were you posting recipes that were like your main meals or what did you start with when you started blogging?
Yeah, there was no rhyme or reason, LeAnna. It was a hard pass because like I had no editorial calendar. I had nothing. It was literally like, and I had a very old point and shoot camera that you actually would take to Walmart and get the photos like printed out. I mean, it was like there was a digital aspect of it, but it was not fancy. So I would literally be like, oh, I think I'm going to make cookies today. Or, oh my gosh, I made a dinner that was yummy. It was like half eaten and I was taking a picture of that and posting it online because it seemed like a good thing to do. So starting out was just quite honestly, literally anything that we ate that was yummy, I would post about it. And I still have a lot of those old posts and the pictures are horrific. And sometimes I'll highlight them for readers just to be like, look how far we've come. But it was probably a few years before I think it was like 2 years after that I got my first comment of someone that was not related to me. Like it wasn't my mom, it wasn't my sisters, it wasn't this club that I was part of, this baking club. And I remember totally freaking out and being like, if it's a stranger, they must be a stalker, And I was like, because just, it was so unfamiliar. Interestingly, that sweet lady that commented still reads my blog today. It's such a funny thing. Like when she comments, I will always say like, you guys, if you're reading this comment thread, like Michelle's been here since like the very beginning. But again, that was right as Google was ramping up. And so starting to get comments on my blog was really just Google saying, oh, there's not that many recipes on mine. Definitely not as many as there are now. So my recipes started to just rank and I was getting all of this organic search traffic, which has just benefited me over the years because that's been a huge source of my traffic always is just organic search results. But it's been fun to kind of see that. I was like 2 years in and then like by 5 years in, I was like, I think this could be more than a hobby just by nature of it growing so much.
I mean, there's so much that you had to learn along the way. Like,
Oh yeah.
like you saying, like, you were using small cameras. What's funny is I actually found some old film that I had not developed it in 20 years. And I was like,
that's amazing.
I'm like, can I still develop this? I mean, it was almost like I took everything to CVS because that's where they develop things. They used to anyway. It used to be very fast. And they're like, it's 2 weeks. And I'm like, wait a second.
They're not what they do anymore.
Nobody drops off film anymore. He's like, LeAnna, they probably have to send it to some like.
Oh, I'm sure they're sending it. Sending it to the one facility in the whole United States that's still developed.
Yeah, it was funny to get that film back too. Like a lot of it didn't.
Yeah,
but it was so interesting. Like this is so 20 years ago. Like
it totally is. And to your point, like when I first started blogging, like when you joke or even it's not a joke, but talk about coding, I was coding everything because there were no, like WordPress was so new. And so it was like they didn't have plugins and all of these things that make your life so much easier now. So, I mean, I was literally like asking people I knew, like if I knew a web designer, you know, in my neighborhood, they taught me how to do the back end coding. And it's interesting because those years were really a lot of blood, sweat, and tears because I was building everything from scratch, like the design, the logos, the food photography, everything. But it has been such a great benefit because I'm still able to sometimes like sneak into the back end and do my own thing. I have a web designer now, like I've been able to hire a lot of that out. But that core knowledge that I gained back then, I just still laugh. I would stay up because my kids would be up all day and then they'd go to bed. And it was like, I was like frantically like getting stuff done on the computer, you know? And we joke to this day because my kids would come in. One time they came in and they're like, how come you're always playing solitaire? And I'm like, I'm not playing games on the computer. Like they would go to bed and come out and ask for drinks and see mom at the computer. And for years they thought I was just like playing games. I was like, I'm not playing games. I'm kind of working, but I would literally just sit down and just be frantic to get all of that stuff done because there was no one to do it. There just really wasn't anyone to do it. Blogs were so new. It's hard to overstate how new they were and how, anyway, that interesting journey of being there and now being here.
Yeah, this is a great story too, because I love the progression and to see where it is now, you know, and I tell people like our content creators, you guys are truly multimedia companies. Like you are no longer just writing a recipe. Like you are a recipe development, you're testing, you are photographers, like you meant, you're taking your own photos, and unless you get to the point where you can share them.
Yeah.
You're doing all these things. There's videos that are involved. You've got brand partnerships. There's so many facets to the businesses now that it's just so impressive, like how far it has come and what you all have been able to do with the businesses that you're building over this time.
Yeah. And it's really so fun. When people ask me about it, sometimes I will just say, the short answer is it's way more than making chocolate chip cookies, right? That's still a core part of it, but and I think when people realize that, if they really ask to understand, it's kind of mind blowing to them to understand what goes into a food blog. Like you said, it can be coding sometimes. It can be, I mean, obviously it's writing, it's photo editing, all of these things. I just think it's pretty amazing. It's such a fun space to be in and see how much it's evolved and changed. Some of the changes I don't love, but you know, that's like anything. I think it's a great space to be in.
Now, I know you live on a faux farm, like you like to call it a faux farm. To me, it's still a farm. When did you move there? And I feel like that is, you know, become really incorporated into the brand a lot as well. So like,
yeah, I do talk about that quite a bit on my blog and Instagram. We live in Southwest Idaho. We moved here like 10 years ago from Minnesota. We had lived in the Midwest for a long time. And when we moved out here, our kids were like ages 12 to 5-ish, actually maybe even a little younger. Anyway, and we just decided if we have the opportunity, we would like to get some land to help our kids just learn how to work and be outside and whatever. So it just was such a huge blessing and benefit that we found this 25-acre piece. But my husband and I are not farmers. Like we have just learned as we go, which is why I call it a faux farm, because our motto is like, make it till you make it. Like there's times that I'm like, what the heck are we doing? When I am in an hour-long discussion with my husband about irrigation and I'm like, who am I and how did I get here? Like, I actually don't know if I care about this. So that's kind of where we've been. We mostly raise beef cows, you know, on the back part of our pasture, but we've had pigs and miniature donkeys. And of course we have chickens and we get our own eggs. So it's a pretty great life, but it's a little bit like food blogging where I think it looks really dreamy, but it's so much work. Our weekends are all work, right? And the kids are walking electric fences and I've had 2 kids graduate and leave. So I'm like, our service pool is getting smaller. And they don't like that because then there's more work for them to do. So, you know, we always have conversations like, is this a forever thing? I don't know, but it's been really fun. And we have just kind of like live in a little town, but we have a lot of space around us. So it's peaceful and quiet. It's a great life.
I love how, you know, one thing that you do is so technical and, you know, digital age era. And the other is very, that's earth. That little bit helps to ground you like a little bit. Like,
oh, I do for sure.
You know, like it really, but I love that aspect of your brand because it's just a little different. And
yeah.
And
it's been fun. And that, that came up in the cookbook too. I feel like of just being able to kind of capitalize on something that is different and is unique. And I feel like it's fun to be able to do that. You always want to be able to set yourself apart a little bit, and just, it's such a natural part of our lives that it's not contrived. It's just part of what we're doing.
Yeah. And I love the photos that you've taken. I just love those. I was like, oh, I love this. The expansive nature and having land, being in New York, it's like, I have.
Oh, sure. But again, the grass is always greener because I'm like, oh my gosh, like
there's so much land. There's so much work. But that's a great segue into the cookbook. Like, I'm curious, like, did you always dream of creating a cookbook? Was that something on your wish list? How did that all sort of start percolating in your mind?
So I would say that a cookbook was not always on my radar because in my mind, I have dealt with a lot of like imposter syndrome over the years of having a food blog, because for me, it was like, oh, cookbooks are for like legitimate chefs or people that are really professional or really have a career, right? And I think when you work for yourself, and especially in the digital space, it's been easy for me to like talk myself down from what I've really achieved or what I've really done, But I would say over the last maybe 7 or 8 years, it became a bucket list item where I thought I would love to have a cookbook for 2 reasons. One, for my loyal, devout readers, and I have a lot of them. I feel like I have just the greatest audience in the world, and they've asked for it. Like they ask and ask and ask for it, and then I just would kind of like, I don't have the time or I don't have the resources or whatever it is. It just was never a thing to do. But then also as I've had kids get older, I thought how amazing to have a cookbook to send off with them in the world. And so that was able to kind of funnel my ideas to say, if I were to do a cookbook, it would have to be the best of the best tried and true recipes. Like it narrowed my focus. So then I started to have some publishers kind of reach out, smaller publishers, no one like huge where it was like, oh my gosh, this would be like an opportunity I can't turn down. But it got the wheels spinning of what are the options? Like that's obviously a traditional publishing route. And then I feel like self-publishing has exploded in the food blogging space. So I had friends doing that. And anyway, it kind of was like this snowball that started that way and then ended with my husband losing his job and us talking about that this might be finally the right time, which sounds maybe like we're capitalizing on an unfortunate experience, but he was able to help out with some of the things that I was tackling at home that has made it where I never had the time. And then it being able to financially boost our family. So it was like kind of this twofold thing where it was like, I think it's the right time to maybe explore this. And talking to a really good friend of mine in the food blogging space who was willing to share everything about her self-publishing journey was when I said, I think that that's the route that I want to take. But as you know, you and I talked many, many times about, I don't feel like it's just traditional publishing or self-publishing, because even in self-publishing, there's so many different avenues you can take. When I look back at the process, everything I learned, it's amazing to me, everything I learned in that 1.5 year journey. Like my brain just like expanded and grew in terms of like editing and options and marketing. And it's a whole world that I am so grateful I got to be a part of.
Yeah. I mean, when you came to us, you did a lot of research. I actually think that you came to us with like a really dialed in vision. Once you kind of went through all of your research, like you had looked at hybrids, you had received like adding a product that we had created, you reached out or researched a few other options that I didn't even know were out there. And it was really interesting to hear your process of how you went through doing that research. Before you started working with us, were there sort of like key elements that you wanted to try to kind of have on your wish list, or who or how you were going to get this done?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost for me, the financial element was huge. There's risk involved whenever you take on any type of project or investment. And a cookbook is no different, whether you go the traditional route or self-publishing. And so that was important to me to, I think, understand if I was going to make an investment and put money out at the beginning, I wanted a team that I felt like was going to give me creative flexibility. So wasn't going to control the process. That was a huge part to me, that I was going to have like editorial control over design and wording and the recipes that I included, but also being able to have the confidence that the end product was going to fulfill all my dreams, which sounds weird, but like I didn't set out to do this and say I want a whole series of books, and after this one I'm going to do 12 more. Maybe I will, I don't know, but it was like a bucket list item, so I wanted it to be done really well. So I feel like you said, I had reached out to a lot of different design firms. I'd reached out to some hybrid publishers, traditional publishers. I had quotes from everybody. And I had spreadsheets dedicated to the cause, like so many. And I feel like that's how my brain works. I want to know what I'm getting myself into, knowing that there's probably never going to be a perfect solution. But when you take all of the pieces, there's going to be the right fit. And I remember my first call with you, and this is after seeing that some other food bloggers had gone through you. And then I Googled your guys' firm and just really looked into it. And I remember, for me, the personal aspect was like the clincher. So when we hopped on that first call, I just remember feeling like, personality wise, and it wasn't that you laughed at my jokes, although you probably did because you were nice, but just feeling like, when you just get that sense that like, oh, I think we can work together, like this vibe is working. And I had a lot of calls with other publishers, and they were fantastic, like competent, wonderful firms. But for me, that is kind of what clinched it, I feel like, is knowing this is not a fast process. This is a year. And I remember you telling me that, because I was a little bit like, hey, self-publishing is fast. Like, so 3 months we can have a book. And you're like, whoa. Like, people think that, but you need to realize it's going to be a year. And when I realized that, I thought I need to have people I can work with for a year. That's a long time to spend time with coworkers, that like contract coworkers.
Oh, absolutely. And that is part of the process, right? It is like we always tell people, it's a very high touch process. You're going to meet with us every 2 weeks. It's not just me, it's me and Erin on my team. That's a huge part of this process, is just making sure that the author feels supported, because there's also there's so many nuances. And like you said, it's an investment. It's investment on your side, on our side, just time, energy, like, making sure that, we don't want to disappoint, so it's a lot. And for us, it's the same thing. Like I generally know from those first inquiry calls, like, and great if it's a good fit, if it's but most of them, you know what, I have to say, our food bloggers, our content creator clients are very similar to you in that it's, they're very organized. They pretty much know what they want. They didn't get to where they are being kind of wishy-washy, like they know their brand, they know what they want food. And that is exactly the way that you came into this project with us, which was you really did do that research, which made me feel good, because you knew all the other options that were out there, or at least most of them. And you were able to make your decision on that.
So one thing I will say, LeAnna, that I don't know that I've ever told you this, but one of the main things that gave me the confidence that you and your team were the right fit for me is that you have this amazing ability to be concise and compassionate, but also firm. And I actually really respect and appreciate when people aren't telling me what they think I want to hear, but they are telling me what needs to be said. And so, for instance, like the conversation you and I had at the very beginning, this was before I even jumped on board, where you were very kind in how you said it, but very firm about, we can't hurry up the process, right? This is how it looks like for everybody. We understand that these are your timelines, but these are also our timelines. This is what we can do. And I have respected that throughout the whole process that you and I have been through together, that you have a really great way of setting expectations, but also being such a good listener when like I had concerns. Do you know what I mean? And so I felt that from the very beginning. And I can honestly say, and I mentioned it to my husband so many times, I love LeAnna's personality. I love the fact that she will tell it like it is, but in a way that's like very approachable. Anyway, and that was a huge thing for me that I am so grateful for that process. And I can honestly say, looking back, and it was an intense process. And you and I know there were some ups and downs. Like I shed some tears at times, and there were some things that didn't go as planned, But I can honestly say this, I would not have chosen to do it a different route because just the process, and that speaks very highly of you and your team. So I don't know if I've ever shared that, but.
Oh, Mel, I appreciate that so much. That is so sweet. And what's funny too is like, I know like from our side, and I think I do think I've said this a few times, which is Aaron and I, since Aaron and I work closely with every single client on these projects. Like I've even mentioned earlier, you know, you had this vision for the end product. And both Aaron and I really resonated with that as well. Like we knew that you wanted to pour your heart and soul into this book, and we were there for that. Like that is,
and
like,
I feel that, yeah.
Oh, that's great because that is part of the process. It's like understanding like that there's a passion behind it. Because for us, it's a passion to create it. Like it becomes this co-creation that we make, and to find someone that you gel with on more than one level, like, although they're going to get it done, like, but it's more of a personal level too, is just like knowing that we're there to support you and you did the work. Like you had a lot on your plate throughout the process. So we just always talk about how much we love working with Mel, and I love watching you online. And that kind of brings me into like this next sort of questioning, which is when it came to working on the book, were there any aspects of it that surprised you, like in a good way, or things that you weren't expecting to like come up when we were working on it?
You want these to be good things?
They can be that'd be good. They can be whatever they need to be.
No, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, and it's a neutral thing, is I was very surprised at how much work it was. I mean, because like you said, I came into it with kind of what I thought was a clear plan, right? And I basically had the manuscript a lot written that obviously went through variation after variation. It doesn't even look the same as to what I had, had ready to go. But I appreciate that it was so much work because I feel like that is an indication that at the end, I got such a quality product. But I was surprised by that. I mean, you and I and Aaron, we chatted every other week. We had things to do. We would circle back around and do our to-do list. But I was maintaining a full-time business at the same time as doing this. And I would say it was a solid part-time job, trying to make sure I got my edits in on time and all that. And so at the time, it was really stressful. But I'm actually really glad. I feel like if it would have just been like, oh, whatever, like we don't really need to edit that, or, we'll let that slide through. Instead, it was like fine-tooth comb. And I remember you guys telling me it was like this funnel that would slowly get like smaller and smaller as we just edited down. And I remember halfway through, I was like, I think we're done. Like, I think we've done enough. But when I think of that manuscript versus like what we got at the end, like it's pretty incredible, the final product of that, everything from the design to the editing to what's included, the photos, everything. I feel like it's pretty incredible, but that surprised me. I think it surprised me just how much work it was. But I will say it was really fun for me. I was an English major in college. And so like it helped my brain love that again, of like very systematic editing and organizing and pages and manuscripts. So I did enjoy that process quite a bit, even if I did pull several all-nighters to get my edits into Aaron.
You did a great job. And the book, it turned out beautifully. I mean, you picked a lot of different, when it came to the actual physical aspects of the book. We spent some time trying to figure out how we wanted it to feel in your hand. So it wasn't necessarily just about the finished product. Here it is, the cookie cutter. We spent a lot of time figuring out the different textures that we could use when it came to the book cover. Like we tried a different cover material initially.
Yeah.
We were going to love it. And we were like, yeah, I don't love it. And
yeah,
there were different little aspects. We really wanted a certain paper, which the paper we know can be
let's not go there. Let's just.
But it's like, but we went through these exercises.
Yes.
And finding what was right for this product. And I think that was a part that I know on our side, like we really appreciated, because again, it was like this detail that you wanted, and for this end product to feel like, and when somebody received it.
But what was great is that, yeah, I mean, I was just going to mention the embossing. It's the comment I get probably most from people who get the cookbook, is that they get it and then they feel it. And then they are like instantly feeling like this is such a high quality book because the letters have texture to them on the cover. Those are all things I never. So when you say that I came in with a firm idea, I had a firm idea of kind of like what I wanted in the book, but my mind was blown with all of the options. And that's where I was so grateful. You've done this for decades. You have, cookbooks, the options out there. So when you would suggest things to me, I would be like, oh, like, I really like that idea. Everything from that very natural style paper that I wanted, because when I first explored it, even with all of those calls and all of those spreadsheets, I didn't know that I had those options. And all of a sudden, this vision that I kind of had in my brain was made so much clearer, realizing I can make something that's very different from what's already out there. And that was super exciting to me. I think on every call, you or Aaron or I would mention that, like how awesome it was that this was going to be a little bit unique in the cookbook space, whether it was the style of paper or the fonts we were using or whatever it was. And I am so thrilled with the book. I mean, even now I have like several copies at my house, and every time I use it or I'm cooking with it, I just think it could not have turned out better, but those little details matter. And they were so fun to see come together and create.
Yeah, it was fun to actually create it. But now this book is big. I mean, it's bigger than any of the other cookbooks that we've created for our self-published authors. You have 140 recipes. So you knew going in that you did not want to cut anything. Usually we do 256 pages. I think we ended at like 336. Some people would say, oh, I could probably just save some of these for later. What made you decide, I definitely want all of these in there? Was there a reason, or is it just because you couldn't part with them?
Probably my obsessive controlling brain that could not part with the fact that I had chosen these recipes. The irony is that when I first had put together this manuscript for a book, I think there was over 200 recipes. So I did have to cut. And every time it was a matter of fasting and prayer, as I was like, okay, please let me be able to like part with this recipe. A lot of them live on my website, but I wanted to include some new ones. And I wanted to update the ones that were being included so that whoever was buying this cookbook was getting something special. So it was either new photos or new recipe notes or new variations or whatever. And so I think you and I ended up talking finally like, okay, you can keep adding more pages and it adds to the cost every time you do. Or eventually you're going to have to say, there's really not a market right now for a 800-page book. So let's try to narrow it down. So it was hard for me. It was hard for me because, again, like I said, this was a bucket list item. So when now I've reframed my mind to say maybe there is a second cookbook in the future, but then it was like, if this is the one and only, I want absolutely every recipe to be in there. And, I quickly realized that wasn't possible, but I tried to cram in as many as I could.
Yeah. And what's cool about it is I love the thickness of it. So it's a thicker book, but since we chose a different paper, it wasn't as heavy. So it was really interesting to have a book with such substance to it, but yet it didn't feel like a rock, which I thought that was great to experience even on our side once we got this.
And I get a lot of comments about that. Yeah, because people have commented or left reviews saying basically that same thing of they were surprised at the thickness and they were surprised at the heft without the heavy weight of it. And again, that goes back to this paper that we chose that was a little bit lighter weight. Yep. But again, I think that the vast majority of feedback I have received is that people are surprised with what a high quality book it is in a space where the cost is not any higher than a lot of other cookbooks on the market. And for me, I love that. I wanted to be able to give my readers something. I wanted to give back to them in a way. And obviously they're buying the cookbook, but I wanted it to be something where they were getting such a quality product. And I 100% feel like that happened. We were able to achieve that.
Yeah, I love this product. I've given it away as gifts already.
Oh.
I'm it's like, I have family that'll come in town and I'm like, oh, I have cookbooks. And I'm like, let's see, because everyone has a different personality. So it's really cool to find something that fits within what they are drawn to. So
yeah,
your book is in several of my family members' homes.
Oh, thank you.
I love that. Once we sent this to the printer and we were anxiously awaiting for the products to be produced, you went into a pre-sale. And I'm curious, like, we went for the pre-sale pretty early. And did you have any expectations going into the pre-sale? Like, I know a lot of our clients actually feel like, who's going to buy this book? Because there's going to be 5 people there. But I think your book did exceptionally well. And I'm curious, like, if you kind of had an inkling that it would, or what that looked like once you kind of opened it up for people to start to buy it.
I had a healthy amount of anxiety leading up to the pre-sale because putting anything out there that's your, blood, sweat, and tears, I was like, what if nobody buys this? I mean, I really was like, okay, well, I guess I have 20,000 copies, that I get to give out as Christmas gifts for the next generation. But so I definitely felt that, but I did have maybe in the back of my mind some confidence that some would sell. And I think you and I had conversations of, let's do the pre-sale, because then it gives an idea of, we had already decided how many to order, so it wasn't necessarily going to help us with that, but it kind of gave us an idea of really kind of what to expect. What I learned from the self-publishing process is if you decide that you need more books, it's not a matter of saying, I need more books and getting them the next day. So it was a little bit of a way to say, are we going to have enough? Or maybe I have so many that I'm never going to have to do a second print run or whatever. So, but when the pre-sale opened, I was completely blown away. And I remember, I think I either emailed you or we had a call, and I said, I can almost hardly believe this, but like almost 6,000 or something books had sold in the pre-sale. And I think we were all a little surprised by that. Like, it was such a great response. If I did it again, I actually wouldn't open the pre-sale quite as early as I did. And that, a lot of the reason is because we had some delays that were unforeseen. And so we didn't know that. And so that caused a little bit of stress, but I will say that most people were so understanding of the process. I actually feel like when I was able to explain that this was a self-published book, that I was putting forth the investment for it and doing everything I could to get it on time, people were much more willing to go through the delays without complaining too much, because they had confidence that like it was a product I was still standing behind. So the pre-sale was, I'm really glad I did it. I think I would do it a little differently next time, but it really did show me that there was going to be a lot of response to this. And then, as you know, we're already in the second print run. We were able to already order that just based on the number of sales, which obviously is super overwhelming and humbling to me that happened, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. And I think too, like when we talk to prospective clients that want to do this, we always try to also explain too that, when it comes to sale, it really depends on your community and the relationship that you have with your community. And I think that's one of the greatest things that our clients have, is they have really grown and nurtured their community, people that are following them on Instagram. And I think you do that so well, because you're like very genuine with your social media. Since I follow you and I follow all of our clients, it's awesome to see like the kind of give and take that happens to you and your community. You've been able to mobilize them in some really amazing ways. And I think that their way of kind of thanking you even really showed with the turnout that you had for not only pre-sales, but like just different events and things that you put on once the books were here.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're right. And I feel so much gratitude to my community for that. To that point also, I think that's why so many food bloggers are seeking self-publishing, because we have a marketing platform right in front of us. And so, on this podcast, there's not time to get into all the advantages you've done. And I was going to say, if people are interested, you have such great content out there that explains the difference between traditional and self-publishing. It's totally worth taking a listen to. But I do think that's why a lot of bloggers in general are turning to self-publishing, because we have spent decades curating content, but also developing relationships with our audience that says, I want to retain the control of this a little bit so that I can keep that relationship with my audience really authentic. And that's why self-publishing for me was the best fit, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, and you guys know, you do, just like you said, you know your audience inside and out. You know what they like. You know what resonates with them. I mean, and you also have the data behind it to say,
right,
know what my top recipes are. So
yeah.
then I put this in there. So it's quite interesting when it comes to traditional publishing because it's just obviously a totally different path.
Sure.
But when it came to your marketing, did you have a plan? I know that you did some TV, you did some other, you had an in-person book launch event, which looked amazing.
So it was amazing. Yeah.
What were all the little pieces that you kind of did to actually just then finally market the book?
I definitely probably did not do as much marketing as a lot of other bloggers I've seen that have had books come out. And that's mostly probably my personality. I don't love being front and center in person. I joke about like putting on real pants and leaving my house, but it's actually a real thing. And I mean, we've already talked about the 25 acres. So my natural element is, and I know this is just me, but I don't like to be super salesy because it feels inauthentic to me. And it was a very interesting journey for me to realize that I was going to have to put myself out there and market the book, because otherwise there was no point in having done a book if I wasn't willing to get out there and do it. So I didn't have necessarily a firm plan, but I knew that marketing it to my core audience, and that was basically Instagram and my email audience from my blog, which I've worked really hard to grow over the years. So I have a really large email list. That was my main marketing plan and strategy. And I still do that, right? I still mention it every once in a while. And that is, I think, doing it in that way has kept it that it feels right to me. That it's just this authentic way of saying, I made this recipe. It's in my book. It's also on my website. But if you want it in a print copy, it's here. I've had a lot of success with that. And the sales have been really, really good that way. And then I did a couple in-person events. To be honest, I'm not entirely certain those necessarily boosted or led to more sales, but I think it just gave some legitimacy to the fact that this is a book that I created that has been published and it deserves some attention.
Yeah, I watched your TV appearance. I thought it was something. That what's funny is like that was in between. Like you had ran out of books, and
yes,
you were like in this audience, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like
yeah, it wasn't the greatest tie-in for that, but
the books are on a boat, like the night be here. But did you see any like uptick in traffic at all or anything after those kind of events? Or
I would say minimal from TV, just a little bit. And I've done TV segments over the years to know that that's kind of how it goes. I think the majority of the food bloggers in my space that are doing TV is more just to get your face and name and brand out there, you know, not necessarily to sell thousands more books. It doesn't translate that way, but it's just like name and brand recognition. It kind of helps with that a little bit so that if it does come across their radar later, they're like, oh, I saw that person on TV or whatever it was. The book launch event that I did, that was so phenomenally well attended and such a fantastic event. And I mean, I felt like I had been hit by a semi-truck after because it was just like so much talking and I loved it. I just loved connecting one-on-one with the people who came in. There were people that came from North Dakota and, you know, South Carolina, which just was mind-blowing to me. I was standing there as they were coming through this line, and in my mind, I was like, they came so far, like, should I invite them over to my house? Like, how do you adequately say thank you for making such a huge sacrifice to do this? But that event was so well attended that certainly I did see kind of an uptick in sales just because the books were there and people were buying them to be signed. They were able to get them signed. But the large majority of my sales, the vast majority, 98, 99%, had just come from me mentioning it online and people submitting reviews, which is so helpful for me to be able to then share, this is what people think about it. This is why they love it. This is why it's worth buying. And just being able to share that a little bit more authentically, that's kind of what helps my personality feel like I can be genuine and also still sell a product.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I loved watching the different highlights that you had from your launch party because to see people flying in, I was like, oh,
it was crazy.
You know, so
oh my God. And my kids were so unimpressed. You're like, wait, Let me tell you what my mom is actually really see. In fact, my sweet teenage boys had helped set up for the event and take down, and they showed up. I told them it'll be done at 9. Show up and help, but so many people were there, and I was not going to turn anyone away. That I was still signing books at like 10. I found out later. One of my friends said, "Yeah, your boys pulled in their truck, saw all the people, and just laid the seats back down in their car so that no one would recognize them, and they didn't have to talk to her." I mean, I think they were just like really like. My mom is something special, but I still tease them about that. But that
was hiding books with your mom there, and
yeah,
it was really fun to watch, and
it was neat. It was a really neat event.
This puzzle is like once the book is finally here, and it's a huge celebration, and it should be celebrated, and
absolutely,
well, all of the things. I mean, you had some really great mentions online, which were really cool to see. And I just think that all of the positive accolades that you've received from it is just, again, it's a testament to who you are and how you make people feel.
Oh, thank you, LeAnna.
It's very genuine. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So one of the other last things I just wanted to talk about was distribution. One of the big things I think we talk about it from the very beginning, and I tell people,
yes,
it is a big conversation. We will talk about it the whole time. And it's finding the right solution for you. So, there's direct to consumer, there's like a mid-level direct to consumer, like in the middle, and then there's hybrid, which can do all the things for you. And we talked about it quite a lot. And you just say direct to consumer. And I just want to see how that has been for you. I know that you found your warehouse and they're local. And so that, they're within range. How has that been for you on that side?
First of all, I appreciate that you bring this up early in the process, because for someone like me that's used to the writing and recipe development, that's a whole piece I don't know. I don't understand. And it did take me several months to figure out what I wanted to do. I think you and I went the rounds. I was like, I don't know. Should I do this? And you're like, just make a decision. So anyway, but I have been thrilled with my situation. I think that is largely because the warehouse that I found locally, and I vetted several. So my husband actually helped with that, interviewing, going and seeing the facility, making sure that it was the right fit. So the warehouse I ended up with is fantastic. And it's been good for me because they are local, so I can pull books when I need them. So if I have an event where I need to sign some books, or, I want some at my house or whatever, it's easy to do that. So it's been really great. I think that, looking at all of the options, there are some huge advantages to doing it another way. And, even now I'm like, maybe eventually I will ship all my books to Amazon and have them on Amazon. There's so many advantages, pros and cons of every situation. But for me, the direct to consumer has been good simply because I've been able to retain a lot of decision-making power in terms of shipping rates and the packaging and when I want them to go on sale and, things like that has been important for me. And again, I ended up with a really great fulfillment warehouse center. I'm sure that would be different if the situation wasn't as seamless, but it's been really good. It's worked out really, really well for me.
That's great. Yeah. And that's really great to hear too. And also, honestly, it's the most beneficial in terms of return on investment, because really are cutting out all these extra ancillary fees when it comes to even mid-tier and then a sharing grid. So it also helps you to recoup your investment faster, and then you have options here. So I think there's best of both worlds, because if it's not on Amazon now, that means that it can always get on Amazon or get wide distribution because it hasn't quote unquote published before. So there's still options, which I think is a great move.
Yeah, it's been good. It's worked out really well.
So I know I'm taking up all your time today, but this is great. It's so fun to talk with you about all of this and just to see how far everything has come. Do you have any plans for the holiday? Are you doing any sort of promos or anything coming up for the book, or have you thought about that?
That's all swirling around in my mind a little bit. I definitely will, and I don't know what that will translate into, if it's going to be a discount code or some signed books. That was something that I wish I would have been able to offer more of, because that's probably the most requested thing that I get is, can you sign this book? And so there are things coming. I'm trying to leverage that with respect to people that have already purchased and looking forward to how it can be advantageous for people that want to purchase for the holidays. But I think I do have something exciting in the works for around Black Friday, but probably not right on Black Friday because there's just so much competing around that time. But somewhere in the holidays, because for me, this is really my first holiday season to celebrate my book. Last year was just the pre-sale and we didn't have physical books. And so for me, it's pretty exciting to be able to do something with that for the first holiday season that the book has been out.
And since we did do the second printing, are sales pretty consistent, or like how has that looked since the second printing has come in?
Certainly the vast majority of sales came in when just with the pre-sale when those books came out, but I have been surprised at how consistent sales are. A lot of that is I have been really strategic at where I place links on my blog for the book, things like that to help that come. But I would say it's very steady. And I love seeing that. I mean, for me, I feel like there's enough copies in stock that I'm not in a position where I'm worried that I'm going to have enough for the holidays. I know I have enough for the holidays. And so it's just really fun to see those steady sales come in. For me, just knowing like people are still loving this, like they're wanting to buy this, they're wanting to gift it. And I have heard from a lot of people that they got in on the pre-sale, they got, one of the first print run books, but now they want to give it to other people. And I don't know if there's a higher compliment than that for my work than for them to have the book and say, this is amazing enough that I want to gift it to other people. I really want to honor that in the way of just thanking my readers for doing that and for just being so grateful for the product. I'm grateful for it and I'm glad that they're appreciating it and loving it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have any advice or tips for somebody who is considering this process?
Definitely. And I really mean this. I think your content and podcasts are gold, the informative sections that really tell you what you can look forward to. Because I think you just don't know what you don't know. And there was so much I didn't know about the process. But I think for me, it's been such a validating process to be able to create a product so different than my digital, online world that I think if anybody is interested, it is 100% worth pursuing. And I think you can even go into it without really knowing a firm plan yet. I felt like I knew that ebbed and flowed, but I think flexibility was the key with that because you and Aaron would come to me with ideas that I never would have anticipated. And I was like, let's do it. Like, let's shift gears. Like, let's change. And so I think my advice for anyone is explore it, do your research beforehand. There's so much you can learn online before you really explore the opportunity. But I will just say I had not regretted the process at all. It's just been probably one of the highlights of my food blogging career for sure.
That's awesome. That's so great to hear. Well, so where can people find you online?
So my main website is melskitchencafe.com and all of my content is there, links to the book. But then I also have cookbook and merch and menu pads over at melskitchencafeshop.com. And then all the social medias are just Mel's Kitchen Cafe. It's very straightforward.
And you do have great merch, I have to say. I love the sweatshirts. I love all.
It's been fun. Yeah, it's been really fun.
I can tell you've had fun doing it because they look cozy. They check all the boxes. Like they're cute and cozy.
They're cozy. And we're hanging out with the donkeys in a haze. That's what we're doing today.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I'm so glad we had this time together. Like I said, we miss our bi-weekly meetings, but it's been awesome to watch all the success and the accolades that you've received from the book. And yeah, we
Thank you.
Great holiday season, but we're just thankful that you chose to work with us. So thank you.
Same. It's very mutual.
Yeah.
Thank you.